watching closely.
What's the secret, Max?
You just gotta find something you love to do and then do it for the rest of your life.
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Hello, and welcome to The Establishing Shot, a podcast where we do deep dives into directors and their filmographies. I am excited today to be on here with you on episode 14 of the show, our 14th ever show, which is also the wrap up of our Wes Anderson series, our first ever series on the show. And this is really kind of a bittersweet episode for me personally. I was excited to jump into this podcast, get things going, and to have my beginning, our kickoff to this endeavor be with Wes Anderson has just been a real delight and really exciting and fun for me. And so it's kind of bittersweet. It's bitter because I'm leaving Wes Anderson and all of his movies behind and moving forward. But it's also exciting because wrapping up my first series on this podcast with you, my listeners so far. And thank you so much for listening, for tuning in to listen to me talk. I'm not some movie scholar. I'm just sort of a guy who really loves movies and really loves digging into what makes movies tick. And so maybe you're like me and just love movies and thinking about them and digging into what makes them work. So just thank you so much for tuning in, for listening to the show. I'd like to just start off by asking you faithful listeners to our 14 episode show so far to take some time after you listen to this episode to go on Apple Podcasts and leave a quick review. Even if you don't really listen on Apple Podcasts, it's just super helpful if you go on there and leave a little rating and a review. Helps the visibility of the podcast a ton. And then on Spotify, it really helps if you go and leave a star rating too. Even if you don't listen on Spotify, just go in and leave me a little star rating. I think you have to listen to an episode. I think you can just kind of scrub through an episode on Spotify before you're allowed to rate it. But that would just be a huge help to me. It just takes a minute of your time. And so that would be super helpful. And I like to share the reviews when the reviews come in. So I'll give you a shout out on social media and in the next episode. And I just really appreciate it. And then if you've been enjoying the show so far, please consider supporting the show. I have an option through Supercast to have some paid subscriptions to the show. That helps me improve the podcast, improve my equipment, and be able to get books and extra feature movie discs and stuff like that, so that I can make the show better. Helps me keep the website running, this podcast feed going, and that would be super helpful. And I like to do a few extra things for you too. If you're a subscriber, I have different tiers you can go to and subscribe to and support the show starting at $5 a month. It just helps me, and you'll get early episodes. And I hope to get some other stuff going for people who support the show in that way too, like a Discord channel and stuff like that. So that would be just really helpful if you would do that for me. Yeah, just leave those reviews and ratings on Spotify and Apple. And if you really love the show and have a little bit of extra monthly money. Maybe you're kind of cutting off some extra Starbucks coffees or wherever you get coffee. Just consider supporting the show, and I would just greatly appreciate it. It would mean the world to me. So, but yeah, I am Eli Price, and this is the Establishing Shot, and we are closing out our Wes Anderson series with a bit of an epilogue. This is not going to be a long show. I'm sure if you are a faithful listener, you know that most of my shows, me and my guest follow tons of bunny trails talking about these films and Wes Anderson, and doing our movie drafts, which is so fun. And, I don't have a guest today. I'm just going to share a few things that really I'm going to kind of start off with sharing a few things to kind of close out the Wes series, things that I've learned about, Wes and his films specifically, some threads that kind of run through all of his films. And then just maybe a thing or two about what I've just learned about this endeavor so far of watching through a filmography of a director from start to end. And so that's what we've got on the docket for today. So I hope you enjoy it. And we're going to jump right in. So when I started this series, we started with an overview episode, and we talked a lot in that episode about Wes's background, but we spent a lot of time talking about his technique and his themes that we see throughout his films. And after watching through all of his movies again, and then Asteroid City for the first time, his latest film, which I hope you enjoyed the episode last week on that. There's been some things that have really stuck out to me about Wes Anderson and his films. So one of the major things that I really have just seen and that we've talked about a lot throughout these episodes is just the fact that Wes seems to really care about his characters. He's notorious for kind of pushing off the idea that a character is based on a single person or himself. And that's fair. He bases his characters off of a lot of different things, ideas and people he's known, multiple people, friends and family or whatever. And, but what sticks out is not so much who his characters are, or even necessarily what his characters are like. But it's more to me the detail that he puts into them, and where he takes his characters. And always he ends up taking his characters to a place where they, in some way or another, learn to kind of love who they are, and kind of come to terms with who they are. And really other people too, the other characters in these little worlds that Wes creates, they always come to this point where they are more accepting of these other people that they're in these worlds with. They're these other characters. And and then the parallel to that is just what I've heard over and over again watching featurettes of these movies with the cast and the crew, and just these people talking about how much Wes loves them and what they bring to the table, how much he really spends time, with them and bringing them together. And so, Wes really cares about people, and that comes out in how much he cares about his characters. And, his characters are also like unique, and they have their own little quirks. And their own flaws. All of his characters have such huge flaws in different ways. But what's really amazing to me, and really it brings a huge wave of grace into his films, is just the care that he has for his characters. He loves people and what make people unique, and that comes through in the way he treats his characters and the way where he takes his characters in his films. You think about someone like Mr. Fox in Fantastic Mr. Fox, and Royal Tenenbaum and the Royal Tenenbaums, characters like Max Fisher and Rushmore, Steve Zissou and The Life Aquatic. Even more recently, a character like Augie in Asteroid City, or the actor that plays him in the movie. You think about all these characters, especially characters that are kind of the main character, or a front and center character. They all have these huge flaws, but at the end of the movie, Wes cares about the characters so much that you end up in a place where you see their flaws, you see them for who they are, but you have this empathy and this grace for that character that you maybe didn't have when you started off. And I just think that's a beautiful thing about his films, and what he does for his characters. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things that I've seen about Wes and learned about Wes. And I think something that comes out of that too is less about his films, but more about the way he goes about making his films. Over and over again, I've run into interviews and with both Wes and his crew and cast, and they always talk about how intimate of an experience it is. They know when they show up, they're going to be staying with the cast and the crew all together. They're going to have dinner together. They're going to show up to the set ready to go. They're not going off into trailers. They're not leaving when they show up. It's kind of like movie making camp. Even Wes talked about in an interview people breaking out guitars after dinner and singing songs, and man, what that shows me is just how important it is to make art and create in community. Wes creates these little worlds for his characters in his films, but he also creates these little intimate worlds on his sets and while he's shooting for his cast and crew. That to me is just an amazing thing. It's something that I personally don't hear a lot about a ton of directors. A lot of well-known, well-accomplished directors. It feels like they're very like, let's get the job done, that sort of thing. And I think that's sort of changing a little bit. You start to see more and more directors being more personable, but Wes has been doing this for a while, and I just love that idea of making art in community, or creating in community, creating a space where people are comfortable, where they know that they can be who they are, and that they'll be accepted for that, and allowed to, within that space, be free to be creative, to express in that artistic way that they're made to express themselves. And so that's just something that I love about Wes Anderson, and just the way he goes about making films, just the making art in community and creating in community. And it's something that I think has inspired me to really like work on building a community in my life, to work on this podcast endeavor, to just keep moving forward and keep bringing on guests, returning and new guests, and creating this community of people that love to talk about movies, and dig into movies and learn from them and learn with each other about movies. And so and then just just that idea of creating in community, whether you're creating something like artistic or just creating relationships. I just, that's something that I've kind of taken away from this series on Wes Anderson. And yeah, I think one of the other big things that I really has stood out to me about Wes Anderson and his filmmaking is just, uh, I guess, this thread of reconciliation. I talked already about how all of his characters have these flaws, and sometimes they're minor, sometimes they're major flaws. Sometimes there's a lot of them, You think about Steve Zissou, and that guy is all over the place. But there's these moments of reconciliation at the end of pretty much every Wes Anderson film, where you have these characters that are flawed. They're not just flawed in themselves, but they're flawed in the way they relate to each other. You have these moments like, uh, you know, going back to all the way to Bottle Rocket, where Dignan's in jail and they're visiting him, and they just have this moment where they've gone through this terrible experience with each other, and now they're talking like they're brothers and friends again. And they're kind of just accepting. Dignan just like kind of screwed them over and over, but they know that about him, and they still love him and accept him for who he is. You have that in Rushmore with Max at the party after his play, and all the people he's been just duping and using, kind of reconciling with each other and with Max and accepting Max for who he is. You have that with Steve Zissou, as they're approaching the Jaguar shark, and everyone sort of puts their hand on Zissou's shoulder as he's experiencing this like moment of just deep emotional whatever he's going through, and people are they all these people that he's hurt in different ways are comforting him, and it's this moment of reconciliation. And you just get that throughout all of his movies. And I think part of it's reconciliation, but it's not something that the characters were necessarily seeking out. They were going about their lives. There's all kinds of brokenness going on between all these characters, but at the end of the day, somehow reconciliation finds them. Um, Reconciliation comes to them, brings them back together, shows them their own flaws, and helps them to see and empathize with the other characters in the movie. And that's just another way that Wes is so graceful with his characters, is allowing them to have these moments of reconciliation where they can come to terms with who they are, and also come to terms with each other, and accepting each other and loving each other despite the flaws. And I think that really stands out in that, that line that we talked about from Asteroid City, where Jason Schwartzman's character, he's Augie Steenbeck in the Asteroid City play, but he steps out as the actor and has the conversation with Adrian Brody's director character, and he's like, I don't get this play, I don't understand it still. I don't know if I'm playing this character right. And Adrian Brody tells him, well, the director, whatever the director's name is, tells him, you're doing him right. Keep telling the story. You're doing the character right because you're doing him, and it's your role. And that's just a beautiful moment that kind of is just, it's a line that shows what Wes has always been doing throughout all of his movies, showing his characters through this story that he's telling, that they are being who they're supposed to be. They are doing themselves right. Accept who you are. Keep telling your story. Keep moving forward. Keep pushing forward. And I just love that about Wes Anderson's films. I guess maybe the last thing that I wanted to point out is more more in line with the techniques that Wes uses and the aesthetic he creates in his films. He has this, well, he is known for these symmetrical and very like stylized, uh, you know, ways that he makes his movies. This aesthetic that he has created, it's created TikTok trends where people are trying to recreate it. And it's very noticeable. It's very recognizable as Wes Anderson. And it's that aesthetic that is very like storyboard-esque, dollhouse-esque, where he's creating these worlds that are kind of self-contained worlds, whether it's the Tenenbaum house or whether it's, Asteroid City or, the train in the Darjeeling Limited train. These little worlds that are kind of self-contained that his characters, are in and experiencing the world in. But also it's this little world that you can, as a viewer, really kind of hold at arm's length and really like examine. It has so much detail and care put into it that you can really experience this world removed from it. Some directors have a tendency to really try to push you into the world of the film, where you feel like you're in it. You're experiencing their emotions as they're experiencing them. You're experiencing this world they're in as the characters are. And Wes Anderson is kind of the opposite. He wants you to remove yourself, to know that you're watching a story, you're watching a film, and then to hold that at arm's length and examine it. And not just examine it. That's not the end goal. That's the tool he gives you. This aesthetic is a tool so that you, as the viewer, can hold it out, look at it, examine it in detail, and get to know these characters in a more intimate way, perhaps, than if you were to be shoved into their perspective and their world. And, perhaps that is subjective in what works for you as a viewer of a film. For me, it works to hold this world out, to examine it with Wes as he's showing it to you and showing you these characters acting within it, and then to subversively, through you being able to hold it out here and look at it, to really get a sense of this small little intimate world, the characters and how they relate to each other, and then the empathy that you can build through that examination of this world and these characters in it. I think everything about his aesthetic that he uses and creates is it works for that purpose. He's not just making these worlds, these this quirky aesthetic just because he likes it, which is part of it. He likes making these worlds, and he says that over and over. There's a purpose behind it, and I think that's part of it, is allowing you to experience it in that way. I don't know that I have a whole lot of other takeaways. We've talked about a lot of stuff that you can take away from Wes and his films. But yeah, those are some of the things that I really just stood out to me, that are just threads throughout his whole filmography. Stuff that's come up over and over again that I wanted to bring out. So yeah, I guess right now we will take a quick break. When we come back, I will give a quick thought about just what I've learned from this endeavor of going through this first series, this first director filmography. Give a quick thought about that, and then I will be announcing our next series. So you want to stay tuned in So you don't miss that. You probably already guessed it from my tease from last week, but I'm going to officially announce it. So please stay tuned in to be able to hear that. But I will be back in just a minute. Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on the Establishing Shot today. We hope you're enjoying the episode so far, and we hope you will stick around for the segments we have coming up after this quick break. But during this break, I wanted to tell you how you can get more involved with the Establishing Shot podcast. There are several ways you can do this. The main way you can do it is by going to establishingshotpod.com, our website where you can find all sorts of information like episodes with the show notes on there, information about our guests for each episode. You can find reviews there, and there's a page where you can actually leave a review on the website if you want to. You can see all the platforms where the podcast is available, like Apple, Spotify, all the major podcast platforms, and even a link to our YouTube page where you can see a video version of the podcast. So please go to the website. And the place I want to highlight there is our donate page, which has information about our Establishing Shot family. This is a way that you can subscribe to the podcast to support all the efforts and the stuff that goes into making this podcast good and making it better than it even is now. We have different tiers that you can subscribe to, starting at $5. And what this will do is you'll be able to support the podcast, help me make it better, and also at the same time, you'll get early and ad-free episodes. You'll get access to our Discord server where you can join in and just kind of talking about movies with a community that loves film. And so we would love to have you in there. And then the higher up in the tiers you go, the more you get. Even things like chats and video chats that we'll do every once in a while where we get to talk about in more detail stuff that we're talking about on the podcast. So I hope you'll subscribe to that. Choose a tier that fits your budget, and I would love for you to support the podcast in that way. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is where you can find us on social media. You can find me personally on Twitter at @DEliPrice, and you can also follow me on Letterboxd. Letterboxd is kind of like a social media for movie reviews, so you can read my reviews there, and you can find me there at just Eli Price, no spaces or anything. So I'm on Twitter and Letterboxd. You can find the podcast on all the social platforms as well, such as Twitter at eShotPod, and then on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok at Establishing Shot Pod. So make sure to follow us so you don't miss anything. If you have any questions or comments about the episode or about the podcast, you can always email us at establishingshotpod@gmail.com. And the very last thing I want to do before you get back into the episode today is just ask you to please go to Spotify and Apple and leave some ratings and reviews. That really helps the visibility of the podcast and gets it in more people's podcast feeds. And so we hope you will do that for us, and we would greatly appreciate it. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode, and I will see you next time on the Establishing Shot podcast. Hey, welcome back to the show. I am excited to be wrapping up this Wes Anderson series with you. I was thinking about not just what I took away from Wes specifically, but what I've just taken away that I'll be able to move forward with in this endeavor, and hopefully you with me as we're kind of doing this epilogue episode. And I think the main thing that has stood out to me, and that just I hope that we can take and move forward as we continue to go through the filmographies of directors, is just the great appreciation you can gain if you really dig into a director and their films. Wes Anderson is a director that I have loved from the beginning, from the first time I saw one of his films, I really like dug what he was doing with his work. And um, I had some films that I thought were a little lesser films in his filmography that through this work of research and digging into these movies and talking about them so much, really, like, even the ones that I thought were lesser, I've grown to just love even more. I didn't dislike any of them coming in, but I've just grown to love these movies so much. And I was thinking about why that is. What is it about this endeavor that makes you appreciate even the lesser movies of a director's filmography? And I think it's just I think often in today's world we have so much that is the spoon fed and given to you quickly, and not just like fast food, but I mean, we're scrolling through social media, we're getting 30-second funny reels on Instagram or on our TikTok videos. We're getting we have just information so quick at our fingertips, and it's not so often that we really slow down. And even in the film world, you have so much content at your fingertips through streaming services, and just ads and trailers and memes thrown at you on social media, that it's not so often that we really slow down and really appreciate and dig into and meditate on art. And that's what film is. It's art. It's not just something to entertain. That's a part of it, obviously. I mean, it's a movie. They're entertaining, but it's art. And I really think what this endeavor has taught me is to moving forward, of just appreciating and really like taking advantage of the opportunity to slow down with taking in content, not just like watch a movie and move on to the next, but watch it, ask why things are happening in the way they are in the movie, ask why it was made the way it was made, dig into how it was made, watch the interviews, research. And that slowing down and taking in this content at a slower pace, digging in, not just watching a Wes Anderson film, but just like really like diving into his films and who he is and why he does the things the way he does. And then taking that movie by movie through their filmography, I just really think we are gaining so much by doing that, by taking this artist and really, it's really what we're doing is studying. We just went through a filmography where we have studied Wes Anderson. We've studied his films. We've studied who he is as a filmmaker, and even a little bit as a person. And so I just think that endeavor of slowing down and not just like taking in the content but studying it together is just so enriching, and it's what art is made for. It's made to meditate on and to think on and to appreciate in new ways every time you watch it, or when you talk about it with others and hear different perspectives. And I just hope that that's something that you've noticed if you've gone through this series with me. And I hope that as you move forward, maybe if you didn't realize that as we move forward and go to, more directors, our next director series, that you'll really like take that time to appreciate the art. And I think we will all find if we do that is that even those films that maybe we don't like or don't like as much by a director, even those films, even if we don't necessarily like them more when we watch them going through a filmography like this, if we don't like them more, certainly we'll appreciate them more and the effort that went into it. And, be able to find those things about it that are, beneficial, and, things that we appreciate creatively about them. And so, yeah, that idea of just slowing down the content intake and really working your way through a director and their filmography, I think is just uh, a great takeaway that I've had after this first series that I hope to really take that lesson from and not take for granted as I move forward into the next series. And speaking of the next series, I am going to go ahead and announce who we are going to be going through and studying, like I said, together in my next director series. I already have a new film studies notebook. I've talked about the little film studies notebooks that George Argill or Argill or however you say his name puts out on Amazon. Great little journal notebooks to take notes in. But I've already got mine for the next director. I'm excited to start digging in, and I am going to throw up a drum roll. Our next director is going to be Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan is, he's pretty well known as a director, even more so than Wes Anderson, making films like the Dark Knight trilogy, Inception, Interstellar. He is, in Oppenheimer, coming out very recently in theaters and being, a huge success. I am excited to dig into Christopher Nolan because Christopher Nolan, for me, is one of the first directors that really started to make me love film. I remember I was in college and I watched The Prestige with a friend, and I was just blown away at just everything about the movie. I just loved it. And it was one of those movies that for a long time was what I would say was my favorite movie. That question that people ask you and you have to have some answer to. The Prestige for a while was my answer for that. And that was, just because of Christopher Nolan and the way he went about making his films. And I'm really excited to really dig into his filmography. I've watched a lot of his films multiple times before, but I've never really dug into them like I've been talking about in this way, dug into the behind the scenes and watched interviews with Nolan and stuff like that. So I'm super excited to dig into Christopher Nolan. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see my notebook here, my film studies notebook. It's going to start getting filled with notes here pretty soon. And so I'm excited to announce that. I will say this. I am not going to be doing starting that series next week. I'm going to do a short episode, just kind of talking about a few more films that I've seen from this year, 2023, that I've loved and want to recommend, and then maybe even taking a minute to look forward to the movies that are coming out this fall, things that I'm looking forward to, and hopefully putting some movies on your radar to look forward to as well. So that's what you have to look forward to for next week's episode, which will be our 15th episode. But, after that, hopefully at some point we will get we just finished Wes Anderson. So not Wes Anderson. We will be saying au revoir to Wes And we will be picking up our Christopher Nolan series here soon. I am super excited, pumped to start digging in. Got my Criterion Collection disc of Following, his first film, in the mail the other day. And yeah, so I hope you are excited, just as excited as I am to start this next series. I hope you study along with me and learn a lot and just have a good time talking about these movies. I've had so much fun making this podcast, getting it off the ground. Wes Anderson was such a fun and exciting choice for us to begin with. And I hope you are looking forward to starting the Christopher Nolan series with me. I'm looking forward to enjoying it with you and with guests. I'll be having some new guests on for this next series, so I'm excited about that. But yeah, until then, I have been Eli Price, and this has been the Establishing Shot podcast. I will see you next time. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on the Establishing Shot today. We hope you enjoyed the episode and got a lot out of it. Make sure before you go to like and subscribe on all your podcast platforms, and especially on Spotify and Apple. If you could leave a rating and review, that would greatly help the visibility of the podcast, and I would greatly appreciate it. Again, if you go to establishingshotpod.com, you can find out all you need to know about the show, where to find us on the social media platforms, where to find us podcast-wise, YouTube, and you can even leave a voicemail there on the website on the right side of your screen. So click that if you want to give a comment or ask a question about the show. Just feel free to leave a voicemail. We'd be happy to feature that on the show. And also, if you just want to email rather than leave a voicemail, you can email us at establishingshotpod@gmail.com, and we would be happy to answer your question there or feature a question or comment on the show if it pertains to the episodes. So please do that, and we would love for you to join the Establishing Shot family. You can, again, find where to do that on the donate page at establishingshotpod.com. We hope you have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.
We were happy here. For a little while.
But look, I figure it this way. Better to be king for a night than schmuck for a lifetime.